information technology, as well as all of the other departments. And want to be sure to include grants management in this endeavor to increasing grant revenue by 20% with successful grant of those identified projects. Have improved oversight of the city's contract management function. This system would include tracking essential terms such as cost-funded projects. This is going to be a critical component moving forward. Next slide, please. The fiscal year 21 accomplishment that I can speak to in my limited time and capacity here are that we've made strides in enhancing the budget process points throughout the process. These very budget hearings and budget tracking that follows support transparency through this process. Additionally, during fiscal year 21, we successfully completed the annual, for example, the Department of Community Affairs developed the framework to execute over $4 million. Highlight is that you see a small reduction in personnel due to strategic reorganization of the department, just to continually meet the evolving needs of the city. In purchasing contracted services, again, fairly flat there. A slight change to better allocate our resources for revenue recovery and discovery, as well as in supplies, you see a significant increase. This is due to an accounting form correction. The contingency was previously placed in the finance department's budget. However, that really should be classified as a non-departmental expenditure. So that has been moved out of the finance department. So when you exclude that, this supplies item really consists of a $2,400 increase. So overall, excluding that contingent ranks of the department, this will help the department work against being negatively impacted by transitions in the team, as well as fluctuations in the workload. The biggest change is an increase in the number of senior accountants in the department. These senior accountants will be assigned primarily to reconciliation and general ledger maintenance tasks. And this will relieve the finance manager, previously the controller, from these type of tasks so that they can focus more on the management of some departments, such as management and oversight of the audit, as well as management and oversight of the budget. The revenue manager is a new classification for fiscal year 22 and expands the functions of the existing tax administrator. This is to expand to encompass all of the revenue streams of the city, as well as taking of the revenue general ledger maintenance and tracking that revenue tracking against budgeted additionally, the online payment practices implemented for COVID has provided the department the opportunity to better utilize staff. So we'll be able to utilize the accounting associate positions, now only functioning as cashiers, to assist business tax specialists during heavy periods. For example, utilizing them during processing transition applications related to FIB, as well as during the heavy season of business license renewals in the spring. This is important for that, also providing that high level of customer service as we transition individuals in, and there's somebody always available to answer any questions. The department will closely work with code enforcement and fire department to monitor and cite businesses for non-compliance as necessary. So you'll note that inspector position is going away in fiscal year 22. If we can look at the next slide, please. That's actually reflected here. So overall, these positions are not gone. Important to note that they have been reclassified or re-identified to be better aligned with industry standards, as well as the needs of the department in meeting the internal needs and the external needs for citizens as well. So overall, there's only a reduction of one position, and one of the two accounting associates is being funded at mid-year. So that covers our position count. also concludes my presentation. So at this time, I welcome any questions you may have.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, you may help me here. I don't see Ms. Willis has her hand up.
Yeah, yes,
In the queue. So Ms. Willis, go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Who's speaking?
Mr. Mayor, in the queue, we have first Councilmember Khalid and second Councilmember Willis.
Is your queue showing that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Khalid is first and then Ms. Willis?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go in that order. So Mr. Khalid, you have the floor.
You talked, Ms. Bembry, about cross-training the clerks for things like business taxes. I know that we also have been writing a lot of legislation or proposing a lot of legislation for impact fees, franchise fees, rental and Airbnb inspection and fees for that. Have you calculated just all of the, I guess the staffing that might be required, or do other departments do that and not necessarily finance?
Well, while those things will impact other departments, almost every decision that's made in a municipality does affect the finance department in some form or fashion. So yes, we did incorporate some of those considerations in this budget. Specifically, you will note that the business tax specialist is only one individual, but we have 2 accounting associates in this budget. And the idea behind that is while they'll be cross-trained to help with business taxes, they will also be available to assist with these other revenue streams in processing transactions related to those that come up. It is also worth noting that that's one of the reasons for the transition from a tax administrator to a revenue manager, because it will expand those responsibilities to encompass those additional revenue streams and do the research and the necessary reporting for those additional streams of revenue.
All right. And then I'm going to ask two more, or propose 2 more things and just get your feedback about them. One is I wonder, would it be helpful to have, I spoke about this yesterday, that sometimes when people are out in different departments, we've had like a lot of fluctuation in staff, just the processing of the paperwork, whether it's like getting multiple procurement quotes or like getting like backup documentation for Edmonds. Like that, I know that that's put a strain on our city council staff sometimes, and maybe also on the finance staff. Might it be helpful to just have like more general clerks in the finance department for that paperwork? That's my first question.
So yes, I do. The way we've structured the department in having those additional accounting associates as well as the additional senior accountants, we are not reducing the number of accountants. So we're actually adding to that. I don't want to say generic because they obviously have a specialized expertise, but they're not specifically assigned like the revenue is, for example. So they have a more of a general nature in how they rise to the occasion to support the department. And so I do think those added positions in that area are going to be able to address the items you're referring to.
All right. And so specifically, like if someone was out in another department that did the submission of requisitions or something for Edmonds, there would be somebody in finance who could help pick up that slack while that person was out.
Yes, so there are some fail safes in the case of something needed to be added in another, but ideally each department has a backup that is identified in their department so that when an individual in a leadership or key position is out, their roles and responsibilities are delegated to another individual that is familiar with that process.
All right. And then this last question, and this may be a bit unpopular, but I know that I'm just going to give a very specific example. With the clerk's department, we I've been giving out proclamations sometimes to families, and then like sometimes people want 3 or 4 copies of the proclamation. The boards that we use are expensive, and there isn't. I've offered to pay for that out of my city council budget, but there isn't necessarily that I'm aware of like an inter-office billing system, whereas like one department could bill another department for things that they're doing. Have you looked into that? Is that something that you think might be helpful? I know coming from the corporate world, like that's interdepartment billing is a way that you keep track of those expenses.
So in local government accounting, it does function differently than private. And what you're calling intercompany billings, we call an indirect cost allocation. Typically in a municipality, that is done when there is a significant and material expenditure that is being used by multiple departments, where a department doesn't necessarily suffice in how to allocate those resources. For example, it might flow into enterprise funds or other funds, and so you would set up an indirect service fund. I haven't seen anything in the city that rises to the level of warranting that the generation or development rather of an indirect cost allocation, but certainly something we can look at and ensure that costs are allocated in the appropriate place when those transactions are being conducted. Ideally, those would be just purchased out of, say, the supplies in that department's budget.
Okay, yeah. Just because I know that sometimes we as members of council, like we will do events, we will have people come out. Like our events can sometimes be labor intensive, and I think that might be a way to track, like to quantify the burden that we might be placing on other departments, so that if they need more staff to do what we're asking, or if we need larger council budgets to compensate staff for what we're asking them to do, being able to track that and quantify that would, I think, really help us figure out the cost of doing business for some of our events. But that's it. Thank you.
Ben Bree, for your thorough presentation. I just want to make it clear, because I don't want you to spend effort and time in areas that are unnecessary. We have legislative specialists that are responsible for making sure that they work with council members to oversee and process invoices and handle budgets. And we also, they're policy analysts. Our legislative specialists are well compensated. I've been sitting in my seat since 2017, and I haven't had any issues with staff not working with me or my legislative specialists to process invoices or get things done timely. And that's even when we have been short-staffed. So I just don't want you to waste your time and unnecessary resources trying to hire people to accommodate council members' requests, because that's what our legislative specialists are for, to help us mitigate that. I've never had an issue, and I've confirmed with my legislative specialist, and she says she hasn't had any issues getting her requisitions processed, anything done timely for finance. And if anything if there's a hiccup, she or either I go over to finance and it's immediately rectified. So kudos to your department for doing a good job, even during times where you have been short-staffed. My questions at this time is, did you budget for, and maybe I missed this, did you mention anything about an ERP system? Because we did talk about the finance team needing a better system other than admins?
Yes, ma'am. And forgive me for not hitting on that a little bit more in detail. But yes, that was mentioned in the capital presentation on Tuesday as well. As today, it is something that is under the finance department, but as I mentioned, we will be rolling out the effort citywide to make sure that we incorporate all the departments in kind of a collaborative effort. But it is slated with $500,000 as an estimate for an ERP implementation in the next fiscal year.
And for me, that's the most important thing. I really do want you all to focus on that, because that ERP system, like you said, will be helpful across the board. It has different panels, and it will be more user-friendly than what we are currently using, and help us keep a better accounting of our finances comprehensively. The second question I have is around grants. That role used to be under the finance, and did I miss that, or?
Yes, ma'am. We do still have a grants manager proposed in the budget. It's the last.
Okay, I see it. I missed it. Okay. All right. And then lastly, as we move forward, Councilmember Reeves and I have been working the times, and we will be bringing the sanitation ordinance before council. And if we move forward towards a single vendor model, the tax commissioner probably will collect the sanitation on our behalf, but we would need somebody internally to manage that process. And we have approximately 40,000 sanitation customers here in the city of South Fulton. Do you think you would need an additional resource in the tax manager division to facilitate that? Because that is going to be a little probably labor intensive starting. Well, it's going to be labor intensive to manage that process.
Yes, ma'am. We are taking that into account, and that's part of the reason I've tried to make the that mid-level positions a little bit more robust by adding those senior accountants. It will allow the ability to handle fluctuations in workload, just like those annual billing periods, things of that nature, like the sanitation billing. It will allow us the ability to absorb those extra kind of ad hoc assignments.
Okay, so and lastly, that sanitation process, although like I said, the tax commissioner will collect on our behalf, but it will require some type of internal audit process, to determine who isn't signed up for sanitation collection. It's gonna require some internal process, and so just keep that in mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have next Mr. Reeves, followed by Mrs. Gumbs.
All right, Ms. Bembry.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your presentation here. A couple of questions here. Will some of these new positions mitigate the time lapse from the time the council approves a contract to the execution of said contract?
There are varying reasons why there may be delays, but certainly being better, more staffed should definitely help in just timeliness of overall of all of our processes, not just that specific area, but yes.
Awesome. So if purchasing has to rebid a project for whatever reason, and that project is critical to the constituency, is it reasonable to say purchasing can put that same bid back out on the street, shortening the time to the execution of that contract to expedite the project that's critical to the constituency?
I mean, in general, yes, but we would certainly, every procurement is very different, and would probably need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I mean, there are some, professional service agreements that are very standard, but when you get into contracting for other services, sometimes they can be very complex and complicated. So Unfortunately, the "it depends" answer really applies here. Ideally, yes, that be something that's very efficient, but depending on the criteria of the procurement, could be a cumbersome process.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Gomes, you're up.
Good morning. I think Councilwoman Willis touched on one of my concerns was about the ERP. So it's good to know that you all have taken that into consideration. But also, too, have you all made any, I guess, additional plans for maintenance and software upgrades, especially when we're speaking about OpenGov?
Yes, all the maintenance and software, all the maintenance related to existing software is really covered in the IT budget. So you don't necessarily see a line item for that in my department, but it is covered under the management of our existing information systems, which is in IT.
And have we fully rolled out OpenGov? I know we were doing it in phases. So is that program or that software fully implemented?
I will have to find out the exact details of where we stand. I know I have seen a few reports going back and forth with some final edits and determination in terms of the final presentation, but I believe if it's not rolled out in regards to the checkbook or the transactions being out there, that it's very close. We have an update, I believe, Friday afternoon with OpenGov on that process. So I'll know more after that update Friday, but it is moving along, I believe, as expected.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, before we close, Ms. Bembry,
Yes, sir.
I just want to personally thank you for coming in an interim position and doing a fantastic job that you've done. You've been a pleasure to work with, pleasure to talk to when I visit you in your office. Two things I can say that's very important that you hit on today. And one is the issue of cross-training. I think that's very, very, very important. And I'm glad to hear that you're utilizing that in our finance department where it is surely needed. And I must join Councilmember Gomes and Councilmember Willis in expressing my desires to have the ERP system in place as soon as we can. So once again, thank you for the job that you've done, that you continue to do. You and your staff, I think you're doing an outstanding job. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be of service.
Ms. Clerk, next.
This is the Communications and External Affairs Department.
Staff.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. It is definitely a pleasure to talk to you today as we look forward to next year and look a bit back at what we've done in the last year in the spirit of serving residents. With some of the goals and objectives that we have for the coming year in the 2020-2023 strategic plan, one of our goals is to build an internal communication program, and we have started that with a daily communication and email digest that goes out to all staff members to keep them up to date on things that are happening in the city, as well as information that helps them. The drive and the mission is to help them better prepare them to do their job as we serve residents. So we're starting with that. We are continuously molding that and shaping that as we are in the first few months of that process. In addition, we are working on an employee feedback tool so that we can gather feedback more directly. I met with HR yesterday to discuss that, and we had a great brainstorming session about that. Also, in our goals in the strategic plan are to unveil a communication and branding strategy. We have developed the branding guidelines, including some choices for a corporate style logo. Most cities have those now, and that will allow us to elevate the city seal to its official use in documents, but we will have more of a corporate logo to build branding around. We are building also a social media policy, which we should have done in the next few days, in addition to an operating procedure and ways that we operate with our fellow departments and with mayor and council in terms of the things we do, the services we provide, the timelines it takes us to get those done. So those are definitely general standard operating procedures. And we will have all that hopefully put together and ready to put in place in the next couple of months. With a hopeful addition to the staff that is in this year's budget, we will create a visual media position. Part of our challenge is building our digital audiences, both on the web and in social media and on the app. And we have to provide content that is very informative, engaging, and video is the way to do that nowadays. And we feel it is definitely valuable and definitely supported to have a full-time person on staff working on those visual media. We will continue to build the South Fulton beautification project. We have a new person on board who started with us Monday, communication specialist Taryn Love. She comes to us from the Atlanta Police Department, and she is well positioned to work to lead that effort. It will be sort of a community relations role, and so she will lead. Our department name is Communication and External Affairs, and we've built the communication piece and continue. Now we must focus on external affairs, which is I call it community relations, and she will be focused on that with the beautification process project right embedded in that. It's dual purposes. It will ensure hopefully a beautiful city while reducing litter, and then we will seek to engage residents in improving the quality of life in their city. We will build a team called the Litter Busters, which we will be able to call on to do litter cleanups and other projects. We plan to create partnerships with local businesses, merchants associations, and schools, create a robust schedule of events around Earth Day, around cleanups. I can see we do a beautiful property contest with residential and business components. We will create messaging campaigns, and we will partner with our neighbors, much like we did with the city of Fairburn, to do the cleanup we did last year and promote beautification. While the big focus is here at home, promote beautification with our partners and our neighbors as well. And then part of the community relations role is to create a citizens ambassador committee of about 25 people, residents, businesses, faith-based, that we communicate with regularly, and they are, we can bring them in once a quarter and meet with them and share our successes, share our current and planned projects, and then also use it as a feedback tool. What are you hearing that we need to know, and start that two-way communication on more of a grassroots level. Next slide, please. We want to, as I was talking about digital, we want to increase our media audiences, social media audiences by 25%. That is with improved content, with key engaging video, photography, and messaging. Do more interactive content such as polls, surveys, contests to really drive those numbers up. We are planning an impactful 5th anniversary celebration. We're working on plans now, tentative plans, and these certainly will change. We are suggesting maybe a gala on the Friday night. The 1st is on a Sunday, May 1st, the city's anniversary. Then the next day we would do a city day with various activities, Zumba, a car show, 3-on-3 basketball, maybe a celebrity tennis tournament, a 5K. So we're in a family event. So we're thinking big, and we will draw down to something manageable. And then the Sunday, the actual day, we would do sort of a gospel on the green at the amphitheater, hearkening back to the old dinner on the grounds. And so people can bring picnic lunches, and we have local choirs and other artists performing from the stage that day. We want to, as part of community relations, organize a collaborative citywide toy drive as a first of many citywide outreach engaging events. We will work with police and fire to not supplant the efforts they do, but definitely partner with them and the toy drives they do, and just hopefully increase reach and hopefully increase the number of toys collected and therefore the number of children impacted. We plan to take the city newsletter earlier in the year. We doubled production. We went from once a month to bi-monthly, and the plan is to take that hopefully weekly. It will not be many benefits in that. One is before, if it came out on the 4th of the month, anything that happened on the 5th was not covered until the next month, and therefore it was old news. So we want to ensure we're getting news out in a timely manner. And also, by doing it weekly, we will be producing much more abbreviated newsletters that do not overwhelm with a vast amount of content. So in research I've done in other positions, what I learned was about, if you've got a good impactful lead story, about 73% of people click on it. That drops in half to 34 for a second story, and again in half to 17 for a third story, and a lot of stories thereafter do not get clicked on or read. So we want to make sure we're timely and that we're concise and strategic in our messaging. And then finally, launching a monument sign initiative to get some monument gateway signs constructed and placed in the city. We plan to do 2 digital signs in FY2021. These will be major gateway signs with digital screens and a messaging component. We have 4 more of those planned for FY23. And then for FY24, a series of 8 to 10 smaller signs with smaller digital components that may just be text placed in key places in the city, as well as you may see them for other cities, especially along South Fulton Parkway. There are some nice pole signs that just let you know you're entering the city, and those can be put on lesser traveled thoroughfares throughout the city. So that is the sign initiative as it is laid out now. Our accomplishments for the past year, especially with COVID, we're very proud of some of the things we've been able to do, the successes we've had. We did completely redesign and launch the city website. The numbers show for 6 months before that launch and 6 months after that launch that we increased traffic, unique visits by about 16%, which is very successful result of that redesign. We did launch the Daily Digest, which I talked about before. We created the Now You Know video series, which has been very successful with Police Chief Meadows, highlighting key laws that people need to understand, as well as some of the inner workings of the department, as far as training, recruitment, exactly how those processes are laid out and how they happen, and then safety tips. And we do those once a month, and we have them on the city YouTube channel, which, as we develop this visual media role, we plan to really focus on the YouTube channel, clean it up, and start the effort of what can be described as a TV channel based through YouTube, and where we have everything organized in content, and we're doing regular programming like a South Fulton 101 or Now You Know, or other key programming that follows our department's mission of engaging and informing residents. This year, we also created the new Residents Guide, as well as an adapted version of that. As we brought Fulton Industrial into the city, we did a business guide to introduce the city and its services to the new businesses on FIB. We did reach 322 media placements between January 1st and January 30th of June 30th this year. And that, when you look at the numbers, that is a 260% increase that we saw from April to July. We had 46 placements in April and 120 in July. So our efforts to generate content and place that content have really paid off. We're placing more quality stories, and we did change how we measure. Before, we were measuring the number of press releases issued, but that does nothing to take into account delivery of the content, because if you're just producing press releases and not ensuring their delivery, then that is definitely not a successful effort. So we now track placements, and a placement can be if we do a news release and one of the TV stations runs it at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or 5 and 6, but 2 newscasts in the afternoon, evening. Maybe it appears on the 11 o'clock, and then they run it again in the morning. Those are 4 separate placements that reach 4 different audiences. If it is placed on the station's website, that is a 5th placement that reaches a different audience. If they include links to the story teasers on their social media, that is another audience. So right there, you can have 6 placements with just one media outlet with one story. So that is a more accurate picture of the reach you're having and the messaging that you are delivering. So we have really seen an increase in that. We are in the process of searching for and interviewing for a media relations specialist for the team, that their sole job will be to act as a reporter and journalist for the city. And they will interact frequently with different departments to find the key stories, find the things happening, as well as mine the city council agendas and find out what the council is doing, the legislation passed to better the quality of life. And that person will be in tune to that. They will get to know the key editors, assignment editors, and reporters in Atlanta and surrounding areas, and they will be managing, delivering that content. We managed successfully the first 2 cohorts, the first year of South Fulton U, our Citizens Academy. We served 96 residents in the first 2 cohorts. We heard great feedback from people. We indeed set up we want to work on a second tier, sort of an alumni session for South Fulton U. We started that with a meeting with the mayor with the first 2 cohorts earlier in the year. We want to continue to plan those where we are still reaching out and continue to reach out to people who have completed the program and still get feedback and engagement from them. We did kind of shift gears and adapt and do a visual state of the city, digital state of the city address, all through video, and that was very well received. In fact, that was one of the most watched videos programs on our YouTube channel. We did manage the city reopening and CARES Act assistance plans, as all of those CARES Act assistance, the rent and mortgage assistance, the business grants, and other arms of that initiative were very successful. We hope we were able to support those adequately. And sort of an intangible of a lot of the focus that we've placed on media and telling key stories is I have talked with Police Chief Meadows on a number of occasions, and I keep asking him, are we having an effect on how your department and public safety is viewed in the city? And he has told me he believes we have. There was a time when our social media channels were filled with comments about long response times, ineffective coverage of some crimes. And we have changed that narrative to where people see the response times along with the police beat redesign. That discussion has gone away. We have put out there the actual numbers and shown the double-digit decreases in crime each year. And so we feel we've really helped enhance that reputation. And we want to now take that as a model and apply it to other areas of the city and help build the positive image, honest, very real positive image of the great things the city is doing. So with that, we are here at our budget numbers. You will notice just a slight uptick in budgeting. Personnel will be the addition of the visual services, visual media position. In addition, our operating budget has increased slightly just to take care of some needs surrounding that position and some of the event planning that we have on the books for the fiscal year. So we're seeing about a $100,000, $90,000 uptick in the budget this year. So with that, that is our presentation for today. You can see personnel there. We are indeed adding the one person. We hope to, when that person is hired in a few months, if it is indeed approved in this budget, we hope to be up to full staff by the end of the year, certainly. We are now back up to 3, and we hope to be up to 4 with the media specialist, media relations specialist, hopefully on board in the next couple of months. Next slide. That is our presentation. Thank you very much for your support in helping us achieve these things and helping us achieve that mission of informing and engaging the residents of the city of South Fulton. And I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to announce the queue?
Now, next we have Councilwoman Willis to be followed by Councilman Reeves. And then Councilwoman Guns.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I want to commend you for all of the work that you have done because City of South Fulton is quite busy in all endeavors. But I do have some concern, and I'm going to make a suggestion to you and Ms. Sally Jones, and I will follow up with her after the meeting. I am concerned about you all being more of event planning, focusing so much on event planning versus communication. Like, for example, the green, the litter campaign, why isn't that under Public Works? I mean, I do understand you are marketing and handling the communication part of it, but to actually organize it, build it, I just don't know if that's something that you as a communications team should be doing. And also the Gospel on the Green, why isn't that falling under cultural affairs? We have a cultural affairs department. I mean, that's their role, to come up with cultural affairs activity. I don't understand why you all are organizing that versus them, but I do understand you are marketing, getting the information out, doing a press release, covering the event, but to actually organize the event, I don't agree with that. Citywide toy drive, I think that should be an initiative that both public safety departments should work on. I mean, it would help with community outreach. You are marketing, you are getting the information out. I get that, but to organize it, I'm not quite understanding. I really would like your team to focus more on communication and telling our story, building our brand, making sure you all have staff covering everything that's happening in the city, because council did a lot of things this year, and several times we went without coverage. And that's, you know, I am going to request for us to get some type of resource in to cover specifically mayor and council activities, because we do amazing things, but it's not being covered all the time and it's not being captured. And our community needs to know what we're doing in our city, and know all of our efforts. We have increased, according to the census, to 107,000 people in this city. And everything was based on the last census count, which was 2010, with over 88,000 people. So, I mean, we have a tremendous increase. So all of our districts have expanded. We're going to be doing a lot of things, and we really need better coverage. So I am requesting that a resource be added to this budget, so that all of council and that resource be dedicated to mayor and council to help communication cover things that we're doing throughout the city. We need better, we need to figure out how we can get information to reach more of the masses in the city of South Fulton. You did I love the numbers. I love what you have presented to us, but I would like to see maybe somebody focusing on social media, or, you know, I'm glad you added a videographer, but we need somebody to because that's the way of communicating now. So we need a more broader coverage. You do a great job covering public safety, especially police, but we need broader coverage throughout the entire city and what everybody is doing. And so that's where I am. My recommendation, Ms. Sadler-Jones and Mr. Lethbridge, is that you add a resource to this budget to cover what mayor and council is doing. That person will handle press releases, making sure we have coverage at our events, because I am not happy about the misses from last year. And I would like to see more of the events go where they should go, and then let communications focus on, you know, highlighting the events, covering the events, communicating the information about the events, videoing the events. And then I would also like to see that that communications focus on more about our branding and our branding. I saw a city, they have released a whole plan to rebrand their city and, you know, focus on the image of their city. I would like to see our communications team do more of that versus the event planning. That's where I am. That's my recommendation. Thank you for your presentation, and I yield.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. We have Councilman Reeves, followed by Councilman Khalid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lethbridge, I want to thank you so greatly for that in-depth presentation. And far as the data capture metrics on the communication, do you have those broken out in specific group areas, or is it just one solid database?
In terms of the placements, or?
In terms of demographics.
I'm sorry, I missed your last word there.
Demographics, in terms of demographics.
We do not. That is definitely something we are working on, is getting more robust metrics in place and ways of tracking those. We are adjusting our apps that we use to track story placements and the reach that we have. So those are things that we are going to be working on this year. But no, that we're at that point now where we are just having the raw data in terms of where things were placed, where they showed up, and we're having to do that manually based on daily media reports we receive.
Thank you for that. And also too, I'm going to kind of share in my colleague's sentiments. However, because with all of holidays and everything, want to be a holiday. May 1st was the biggest one to me, and I push for that, and I'm just saying that because that's our day, that's our birthday. Culturally, it should be centered around May 1st, and so with the city turning 5, and so I think that this is a great idea, and I think that y'all are on the right track. However, I would like to see that you partner with nonprofits throughout the city who have some subject matter expertise in some of these events, particularly like the 5K and other things of that, to even expand and grow the participation, and to see that how we can really incorporate any thoughts that we might share, as well as we would like to see the events throughout the city. And so, but as when it comes to the event planning, that's because we don't have a contracted event planner. And so that's just to my belief, to my knowledge. And so we might can look at that as well to help you guys along. But I definitely want to see some of our nonprofits throughout the city be able to be at the table and participate in this, as this is something that is ongoing forever, around centered around our birthday.
And we definitely, in the interest of brevity in the presentation, I did not go that in depth. We are definitely looking to our community partners, friends, and neighbors to help us and assist with us in these events. One quick example is reaching out to the Atlanta Metro Track Club, who did a 5K at the Wolf Creek Amphitheater a couple of years ago. And by leveraging their expertise and their resources, we are able to do, as Ms. Willis said, bring in more help. And we're not focusing so much on the details of the event, but at the same time, we raise the level of our event, because if an organization like the Atlanta Track Club does it, then it can be a qualifier for the Peachtree Road Race. So we definitely are looking at all of those avenues. And I understand, and I fully understand the sentiment in terms of some of the events we're doing. What we are trying to do is pioneer some things and get them started. Case in point, with the beautification project, that grew out of a council member's statement request during a meeting that we do some anti-litter messaging. And we thought that effort needs to be a bit bigger, and to develop something in-house that we then partner with Keep South Fulton Beautiful and others. And the whole goal, and I have talked with the city manager briefly, but the idea is that we get that up and running, and then it become a partnership with another department or finds its way to another area. But we had the bandwidth to get it started that maybe did not exist in another department.
Oh, well, I'm all about the beautification because, I have a shirt and I wear it proudly. And so also, too, but let's go back to that 5K Atlanta Track Club. That's great. They're great. But we do have an organization, Organic Here to the City, within that they just put on a 5K this past week. So we might could look at that as an option, just a suggestion to throw it out there. I like things. Absolutely. The city.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, and so and Mr. Leftwich. Now yes, you know, and the more you know, the more you grow. And I gladly coined an end to that phrase, trademark. And so I appreciate that Now You Know series. That is awesome and a great idea. And keep that going.
And again, in terms of brevity, I did not reach into it, but we actually have had discussions with the fire department to do a branch of that with them. And other departments have come to us and said, we love the quick content. How can we do that? So watch for the Now You Know series to reach far beyond police into other areas of the city. And we are very excited about that.
Absolutely. Can y'all do my version then for me, specifically for the council? You know what I mean? Specifically me. And so when I can come into the studio?
We certainly can investigate and collaborate.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you again.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Gums.
Good morning, Mr. Leftwich, and again, thank you for your presentation. Just a few things. What are we doing to engage the older population in the city? Of course, we do have a growing population of seniors in South Fulton, and a lot of what we have been doing has not necessarily reached them all the time. So the council members usually have to reach out of their budgets to kind of touch their senior members. And I understand that we cannot communicate with them all through digital and things of that nature. But have we thought about trying to do a little bit more print or partnering? And I'm glad you all brought up community partnerships with organizations that kind of target seniors. So maybe we can put some print inside of, you know, park centers that have senior programming and things of that nature. And then also too, just having some type of outreach to our seniors a little bit more intensive and strategic.
That is an incredible suggestion. I like the focus, and I'm taking notes right now on developing some, like the new residence guide. Let's develop some messaging that we can place in parks and strategic places. One of the things about print is doing a mass printed piece really eats up the budget, and we are on a fairly lean budget. Knowing that, we're not just throwing up our hands and saying that's not something we need to approach. That is a lot of the reasoning behind the ambassador committee and more grassroots efforts. My goal when I arrived at the city was to create a digital presence that the content draws people and makes them want to experience it. And a secondary goal of that was, if we generate that direct contact with residents, and I have a very good friend who is media relations vice president at Georgia Tech that taught me a lot about crisis communication and other messaging. And he says, he's a former 6-time Emmy Award winner with WXIA. He tells me his most important news source today is his digital, his municipal newsletter. So we want to develop and push our newsletter to almost magazine level so that people want to read it. And the whole pitch behind that is, if we are connecting and doing such a good job, we are then one-on-one, and we're not going through different audiences. And the end result being that the media covers us. They're asking us. So that is my vision as a communication person. Now, I am definitely, when I was in the corporate world, we tried to go that way, and production employees said, we work at machines all day. We don't have time to check in or watch. So we went back to the printed newsletter, thumbtacked to a bulletin board, and copies available. And we learned a very valuable lesson. And I'm trying to apply that through the grassroots efforts, through an ambassador committee, I want to put together a master listserv of HOA leaders, of business merchants groups leaders, faith-based leaders, that when we do a news release, we do any kind of messaging, we put it on that listserv to these key people, and then it cascades down from the HOA leaders to the residents. So we're certainly working to build that. We just now need to adjust, based on your suggestion, to find a way to reach even the senior audience with not only communication, but some engagement opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I have been noticing that some other cities have possibly been doing is actually creating a tab or a landing page that is just for seniors. That's a little bit more friendly. Sometimes our website could be a little bit intimidating. So if we had a landing page that says City of South Fulton Seniors, here's what you need to know, possibly some resources, events, or ways that they can get involved, but through maybe a print newsletter, we can drive them to the website so they can have it a little bit more on their fingertips. But I've seen some success with some of the cities actually doing their own little space and tab, of course, with bigger writing and, more friendly user links for seniors to actually go and get information. So that might be something you all can maybe add to the website to help
I
out.
love that idea. I love that idea. And we could do a guide, much like the new residence guide, a senior's guide. And we could take that. You're going to get me brainstorming, and I don't have time. But we could do a section of the website that is services such as help groups, self-help groups, resources for people with different conditions, and just put that right there as a partner with these organizations that do such good work. We can help promote them with a tab on the website. So this could go a lot of different directions.
Okay. And one last thing, have you considered, using maybe like, again, big partnerships such as like AT&T or Comcast, because they do have litter campaigns as well, anti-litter campaigns to kind of help drive the message to get our city a little bit cleaner. And I know you said no to the billboards, the ones that I liked anyway, but just maybe using something of that nature.
Absolutely. There are many ways we can use to communicate that. And we definitely are looking at numerous avenues, and in addition, and just as important, numerous partnerships to make that message go further and more impactful. So yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you so much and good job. Just keep pressing forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Councilman Khalid.
Hey, thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant idea, Councilwoman Gums, and I want to second the notion of having a paper newsletter. I have asked every year that we have. I think that we can produce a newsletter for about $75,000. If we could do just 2 of those a year, that would be like 1/5 of 1% of our overall budget. I know a lot of seniors who maybe they check their email once or twice a week, but they go to that mailbox every day. They can tell you when the postman is coming, the postal worker's coming. They come particularly not just for information that is even specifically for our city, but maybe, for example, we have elections coming up, and because of SB 202, Fulton County is going from 38 mail, just changes like that have to do with what's going on beyond our city. I think they would really appreciate that. I love you have been doing this past stats about the raw data that's coming out about the 2020 census, but I know we're going to get the full set of data in September or later this month. I would really love to see some infographics that are just specifically for South Fulton.
Absolutely. When those numbers appeared quite hurriedly last week, I immediately that day reached out to the census manager with Fulton County, who has been sort of a really good focal point for those of us at the city level. And my understanding is the more developed, more targeted data is coming out later next month. And we definitely, in fact, she has proposed doing, she's put together just some cheat sheets for the cities that have some of that data. Again, it's not at a super depth level, but we definitely will be communicating those and sharing those on the website, calling it South Fulton at a glance or by the numbers, and we can put those numbers out there.
That's awesome. And I think just beyond numbers, that's some sort of graphical representation like that looks really good on the gram.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to talking about fairs, on creating a master calendar of events. This is something else that I've been talking about for several years. I think that it would be helpful not only in terms of helping all of our staff plan, like we should, by December of this year, we should know other nonprofit or community organizations that work with us to make sure that, you know, there are just certain weeks or weekends where everybody's having an event on the 28th. Everybody's having an event on some particular weekend. And if we could publish our calendar, I think it would help not only us. It would not only help us figure out the capacity that we have to support events, but also making sure that we're not conflicting with other communities.
Okay.
And we have worked sort of on that internal piece by partnering with IT, and they have created a way for, we input most of the events onto the calendar on the website, and then that funnels into an Outlook calendar that all staff members and mayor and council can subscribe to and have right there with their regular Outlook calendars that show all city events that we have been made aware of, and right there in real time on your Outlook calendar.
All right, last two things. You're working, or are you, let me ask, are you working, I know you talked about these welcome guides. Are you working with code enforcement on the welcome guides for businesses so that they're just aware of what they need in terms of signage and things to be compliant with our city?
No, sir, but that's something that we definitely can reach out to the code enforcement administrator and look into.
I would love to see you, code enforcement, and economic development, like all work together so that people are just clear on what the rules are. Because a lot of times, you know, people are opening second and third businesses. They may assume that what they did in College Park or what they did in Atlanta, that they can also do here, and often that's not the case. And then lastly, you talked about gateway signs. There is still a lot of interest in our constituency and our council about a name change for the city. Are we thinking about how we design these gateways that we put up? I mean, like, I don't want to put up a big expensive gateway and then a year from now we got to like totally redo it. Are we thinking about ways to design them that the name portion or the logo portion, if they change, that we would be able to swap them out without having to like remake the entire sign?
And we definitely are sensitive to that and building it into plans. Of course, the name will be a large component of the signs, but a lot of the focus also are those digital boards in the bigger signs. But we definitely are working to ensure with the sign companies that this is something that can be easily interchanged if a name change does take place.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lethbridge?
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Jones, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Most of my comments is going to be to both of you. And a lot of good things have been said today. What is the uptick in your numbers now, Mr. Lethbridge? Did you say 9,000 or 90,000?
Right about 90,000, sir.
Okay, let me just say this. The word brevity was used a lot. And when you are facing a $90,000 increase in a budget, brevity does not exist. Ms. Jones, what I would like, I saw a lot of items on the presentation, but I think the council needs to have a little bit more in depth as to what those items doing. Is there a timeline? You know, what is needed? You're following me?
Yes, sir.
Because you're talking about $90,000 more than you did last year. The other thing I want to say is, you got to know your audience. And I find it to be very concerning that a lot of the council people are making inquiries and suggestions about audiences that have already exist from day one. Seniors didn't get here yesterday. We're 4 years old now, and we're still talking about how we're going to get message out to seniors. I don't think we need to do that. I'm gonna talk a little bit. You know, happiness begins at home. And as mayor, as I come through these doors, I like to see people just enthusiastic about what they're doing, excited about what the next level is. And so Lethbridge, I don't get that at your department. For whatever reason, you don't need to respond, but I don't get that. All right. The other thing is, let's talk about image. You hold one of the reins to our image. Communication and external affairs. You hold a portion of the reins to our image. And I got to go back and I'm listening to Mayor Pro Tem Helen Willis and some of the things that she said, so much of it I agree with. Because it had not been for some of these legislative assistants and things of that nature out there on Saturdays and whatever day it is, taking pictures and getting them back, I don't know what would happen. So I'm saying, that's what I'd say when I say brevity means nothing to me. I need all the facts and the facts in detail. When you talk about image, let me say something else. It is your duty when something is put out in this city that is found to be absolutely incorrect. I don't care where it comes from. It can come from the mayor, it can come from a council person. But when something is put out to this community that you know is absolutely wrong and incorrect, I think it's your responsibility to put that fire out. It's too much going on in the name of the city of South Fulton that is not accurate. And it's coming from a lot of sources, but it comes from right here on this council. And when in fact that we put stuff as not correct, I don't want to come back and talk about it next day or bring back Tammy and say, well, that ain't correct. Well, if it's not correct, what you gonna do about it? So I'm saying we're gonna have to do things. We're gonna have to correct. Wherever the devil raises his ugly head, knock it down. The other thing is, I like all the glitz and glamour. I like all the 5Ks and everything, but you know what? People are concerned about what's going on in our government. How is this going to benefit us? Is this truth or is this a lie? That's what they're concerned about. I mean, I don't mind doing the 5Ks. We were at a 5K this weekend, and I was cheering on Mark Baker, who came in next to last, but I cheered him on anyway. I'm just joking, man. I'm just joking, Baker, Dr. Baker. But there are priorities of what people really want to hear, or what do people really want to see. I got to know my audience. So I just want to put those things on you and Miss Jones. I would like to see that they will express in detail to me and the council really where the department is going. You know, I think it's important that we do that. Okay, having said that, thank you for what job you have done, Mr. Lethbridge. I really appreciate you. And hopefully that you're going up $90,000, we get a good bang for our buck. Thank you so much. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. The next presentation is by the police department.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Before I get started, I'd like to talk briefly about a presentation that I went to with CDRA maybe about a month ago. The Atlanta Regional Commission was doing a land use presentation, and part of that was a survey that they had sent out to potential investors. And of the Fulton, I'm proud to say that crime was stopping and helping us to change that narrative, a narrative from just 3 years. So I'd like to touch on our goals and objectives for FY22. Obviously, with the annexation of Fulton Industrial, manpower is going to be at the crux of that. As you all know, we did our beat design with Georgia Tech about 2 years ago. They initially came up with a 18-beat design, and since that time, we've annexed Fulton Industrial into the city. And so now we're looking at more of a 24-beat design with 2 different sectors that will be operating. And so getting manpower in to cover those geographical areas is going to be extremely important to us. So we're looking to hire at least 50 new police officers over the next fiscal cycle. And so we're expecting to ramp up our recruitment efforts. Many of you saw some of the billboards that we had up throughout the city. We got a spike in applications after those billboards went up, and we expect to ramp up our recruitment efforts again over the course of FY22. We're looking to purchase an independent records management system. I know that I've spoken with several of the council people about some of the problems that we've had with respects to E911 operations. Obviously, starting an E911 center can be extremely costly. We want to try to eat that elephant one bite at a time, and certainly a records management system is one piece of that, along with the CAD system. And so we're looking at taking a step away from Fulton County with respects to our records retention. I know with Councilman Khalid, we had one initiative that we were looking at doing with respects to equity in policing. Well, right now, as it stands, we don't have the ability to pull that information ourselves, and it's rather labor intensive. So we would kind of have to rely on Fulton County to do a lot of that for us. And so we want to start taking a bigger step towards intelligence-driven policing, and that's being able to access our own data in a meaningful way. We're looking at the purchase of new tasers. Obviously, with new police officers coming in, we're going to have to refresh tasers. They are a form of technology, and so having the ability to do that is going to be extremely important, not only adding to our less lethal force options, but also refreshing old equipment. We're looking at purchasing additional license plate readers throughout the city. Right now, we have about 26 or 27 that are owned by the city. We'd like to expand on that. We have a number of different subdivisions that have their own license plate readers. In fact, two businesses have license plate readers on their property, and I'm proud to say we were actually able to solve 2 murders along Old National from 2 different businesses that had those license plate readers. So that technology tends to pay for itself over time, and we certainly believe that we want to have the appropriate digital footprint in those problematic areas for us, and those purchases of the 10 additional license plate readers will help us to achieve that goal. We're also looking at ramping up our traffic unit. We've all gotten complaints about the tractor trailers coming through the city of South Fulton. We're looking at beefing up our commercial traffic enforcement efforts, and certainly having lasers and radars is going to be big for us in our efforts towards doing that. We want to make sure, in fact, we'll be hiring 2 commercial traffic units within the next couple of weeks, and we're excited about them coming on board with the city of South Fulton. So we're going to try to ramp that up and roll that out as soon as we can. We're also looking for additional training opportunities for our civilian and sworn staff. I was giving a speech just the other day about intelligence-driven policing. And when you have an intelligence-driven policing philosophy, you have to have a highly specialized police department to make that happen. And so training is going to be at the crux of what we'll be doing this year. Last year, we were able to do a little over 4,900 man hours in terms of specialized training. We want to even build on that as we move forward into FY22. We were able to get 2 of our gang investigators classified as experts, which means they could testify in any court of law as an expert as a gang investigator. We're right now also looking at, we've already ordered 40 new Ford SUVs that we will use in our patrol division. That's going to help us get closer to our police take-home policy goal. And we believe that that'll put us a much better space once we're able to get those vehicles in and get them out on the street. We've talked about a command vehicle for the police department. We've had a number of big operations when it comes down to police operations. In fact, we've been out on an investigation for the past 4 days, and our personnel have been working around the clock on this one particular investigation that we'll be announcing soon. And that command vehicle certainly would have been a big help to us while we were going through this process. We can move on to the next slide. Looking at our significant accomplishments in FY21, we were able to add 20 new police officers to our ranks. Right now, our ratio of male to female police officers within the police department, we were at 38 or 37%, I believe. I'm proud to say that we're at 40% with respects to female officers within the police department, to 60 male. We just promoted a major within the police department, which helped us to install the last division within our police department. As it stands right now, we have 4 divisions within the police department. We have our patrol division, which oversees obviously the patrol function of the police department. But we also have within that section, we have court services. And right now we have the criminal investigations division, which encompasses our records management and it encompasses our crime scene investigations. It also includes our records management system as well, and license and permits. We have our special operations division, which houses our SWAT unit. It houses our gang unit, our narcotics unit, our drone unit, traffic units, our community policing efforts, and it will eventually be part of, our PAL coordinator will also fall up underneath that division as well. And then the last one would be our Office of Professional Standards. We have internal affairs there. We have fleet management. We have information technology there. Also field inspections, background and recruitment, and in our training. And so that's the last of the divisions within the police department that we have put together. And so we obviously needed supervision to make that happen. And so we promoted 7 lieutenants, 13 sergeants, and 2 detectives also from within the police department. We acquired 25 Dodge Durangos in 2021, which has helped with our patrol effort. You heard me mention earlier that we ordered 40 new patrol vehicles. And then at some point, maybe during mid-budget year, we'll ask for additional resources as we get more staff on board. And so we're really excited that our fleet is headed in the right direction. As many of you know, we inherited an aging fleet from Fulton County, so it's important that we start to surplus a lot of those vehicles. But until we start getting those vehicles in, we're unfortunately having to hang on to some of our older units. We initiated our drone unit. We have 3 operators right now. They're all certified pilots, drone pilots. We have an indoor unit where we've actually deployed once with respects to our SWAT operations. We were able to send it in instead of sending in our police officers physically. We were able to get good intelligence as it relates to our drones, and we were also able to put them up during the disaster that we had when the tornado came through and hit the city of South Fulton. We also have deployed them in cooperation with our fire department, and so we're really excited about that. We're expecting to expand on that in FY22 as well, and so that's one of those initiatives that we're really excited about. Also in 2021, we were able to acquire Perry. Perry is probably one of the most expensive K9 units you'll ever see. Perry is worth or valued at $100,000. And why that's so significant is that Perry was gifted to us by ATF, the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We sent a handler up at the at the federal government expense up to Quantico, and they were able to train up there on a number of different bomb operations. Perry is also able to find ballistic evidence such as shell casings, weapons, when those things are thrown into the woods. And so we're really excited about Perry. She's since gone and cleared Mercedes-Benz Stadium. She goes to the airport routinely. She's able to come down and sweep City Hall for different type of detection devices. So we've deployed Perry on a number of different occasions. And so we're excited about adding her to our ranks. We also acquired Shakan, who is one of our K9, thank you, one of our K9 officers. And the handler is also an investigator, a narcotics investigator as well. So we're going to continue to try to add to our K9 fleet, or our K9 ranks within FY22 as well. One of our big purchases is a weapons simulator. Now, this simulator helps our officers with training under lethal weapon scenarios. We're able to make sure that we put them in real life scenarios where our officers are encountered use of force situations. And it helps us to gauge where they are with respects to our training. And one of the things we expect to do with that also is to roll it out with our civilian police training also. I know that we have South Fulton U. We have South Fulton U, and we expect to put many of our citizens and the council through this training as well as we move forward and we get it in-house. You can go on to the next slide. We purchased 9 license plate readers last year, and they were all deployed along Old National. As I mentioned earlier, we had success with solving 2 murders from license plate readers that were deployed, but those were actually from the private sector. We did acquire our Bearcat last year, and we've deployed it at least 33 times over the course of the year. In fact, our PA system in that Bearcat is so loud, we give warnings prior to breaching in narcotics search warrant situations. We'll give a loud warning to the individuals inside of the house. And on a couple of occasions, the individuals have come out with their hands in the air, and our personnel didn't have to breach the door. Which keeps our police officers out of harm's way, and we're really excited about that. We're going to continue to use it as we move forward. We'll bring it out to our community events so that our community can see what type of vehicle it really is. It really is a rescue vehicle, and we want to make sure that we continue to educate our citizens around that area. During the pandemic, we were able to purchase a scheduling system. I heard that the courts were able to completely automate. Well, we were able to automate a lot of our services where we were able to schedule many of our citizens to come in to make sure that we didn't lose that contact with our citizens, to make sure that we were providing the same level of service. Obviously, nothing replaces face-to-face contact, but we certainly feel like we got to a really good space with respects to our personal services over the course of the pandemic. We also acquired 2 all-terrain vehicles, 2 ATVs. We've gotten a number of complaints about ATV activity in the city of South Fulton. Here's one of the things that we envision with the use of these ATVs. We'll be trained by Peachtree City. As many of you know, they have walking trails, they have golf cart paths there, so they routinely patrol on ATVs. The police chief there is a very good friend to the city of South Fulton. She's agreed to allow her staff to train and certify our people in those operations. We expect to roll those out soon. We've also acquired 17 miles of waterway. I heard the fire chief mention that earlier. This is another area that we expect to use those ATVs along that terrain, along the Chattahoochee that runs that 17-mile stretch of the city of South Fulton. And we'll also use them to patrol in our parks as well. We expect to get good use out of those vehicles. And so we're really excited about the implementation of that. And we also acquired a Ford pickup truck and a trailer that you see depicted in the slide to transport those ATVs from one place to another. Now, I must say that the ATVs there's an exception for law enforcement. for ATV use on city streets. And so we don't expect to use them on city streets, but certainly sometimes traveling from one park to the next, we may occasionally go on the street if they're not being transported by those trailers. Here you take a look at our budget. In this last slide, you will see an increase in our budget from this time last year. A majority of that is personnel that we've asked for, and a lot of that is to cover our efforts along FIB and to help ramp up our beat alignments. You can go on to the next slide. As you see here, we've gone from, we're asking from 101 police officer 2 positions to 131. And what that'll do for us, it'll help us to go from having a 10 beat. Initially, as you all recall, we had an 8 beat alignment. We went from 8 beats in FY 2019 to 10 beats in FY20. We expect to get between 12 to 13 beats in FY22, and we certainly want to try to make sure that we use the remaining balance of those personnel to create the 2 of the 6 beats that we will ultimately see along the Fulton Industrial Corridor. And so that's where you'll see a bulk of our increase coming from, and that's an ask for personnel. We've asked for at least 30 additional police officer 2 positions. We've asked for some additional detective positions to account for the increase in crime that occurs along that Fulton Industrial Corridor, so that we can make sure that we're investigating those appropriately. Now, having said that, you'll also see an increase in our information technology personnel. One of the things that we're asking for is the ability to increase our GCIC operations so that we can try to take a further step away from Fulton County right now. In most of the problems that we've seen with respects to our inspections from the state, most of those are coming on the Fulton County end. I will say this, we've been able to attract some really high quality personnel to oversee our records management along with our GCIC operations. We have Miss Robin Smith, who we managed to get from Sandy Springs, and she's done an exceptional job in terms of being able to manage our civilian staff on this end. And one of the things that we're looking at doing right now is trying to create levels of separation with respects to the staff of our civilian personnel, so that we can make sure that we're creating some upward mobility for our staff, our civilian staff, because we want to be able to not only attract high quality people, but we also want to make sure that we have the ability to retain those folks as well. I'm reminded when I had the opportunity to meet with the state after we went through our inspections, and Miss Terry Fisher, who's over GCIC operations and records management for the state, said that it was a pleasure to work with Miss Smith. She had nothing but glowing things to say about her and the efforts that she put forth in the city of South Fulton. And she said that a lot of police departments throughout the state can use those as best practices. And so we want to continue to build on that as we move forward and take further steps away from Fulton County, so that we could eliminate those errors that we did see in the inspections that we did have in FY21. We also are working with the city manager's office on trying to help with a retention bonus program for our police officers. We're looking at hiring bonuses for people coming in to the police department. If you all have seen, you've probably seen a lot of these hiring and retention bonuses that many of these police departments are throwing at police officers regionally, because it's becoming extremely competitive. We want to make sure that our police department stays on the forefront of that. So we're asking that we look at retention bonuses for our police officers, and also hiring bonuses to try to lure other police officers to our organization. When we cast that vision out about intelligence-driven policing, a lot of these young people want to be part of that technology that we're building. And so getting them to come over with those monetary incentives is extremely important to us. And also we're looking at educational incentives for our police officers too. You heard me mention earlier, with the implementation of intelligence-driven policing, you have to have a highly specialized police department. Well, as our police officers gain those levels of expertise where they're classified as experts in certain areas, we certainly want to incentivize those educational opportunities as well. And so, having said that, I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. We have Councilwoman Willis and then Councilman Clee.
Thank you, Chief Meadows, for your your thorough presentation and all that you do to keep our city and the residents in our city safe. Again, you know, we all glorify in the fact that we have had a decrease in crime in our city when other cities are experiencing increases. So kudos to you and your officers. Now, you know, I had a conversation with you the other day, and I'm going to put you on the spot because this is the perfect place for you to talk about what you talked about with me. And it was concerning the working conditions of your officers. I called you because I was concerned, and I'm still concerned because I didn't really see, if you did touch on it, it wasn't highlighted to the magnitude. And we all want you to continue doing what you're doing in your efforts as far as fighting and reducing violent crime in our community. But what's important to me as well is that we are doing community outreach, not only to engage our seniors and our adult community, but more importantly, I don't see where we're doing enough community outreach to engage our youth and connect with our youth. Last year and the year before that, we asked that $50,000 be put in the budget to initiate the Police Athletic Association. And I know pandemic has an impact on that, but I didn't see anything, unless I missed it. I didn't see you mention anything about bringing that back or putting that infrastructure in place for 2022. I didn't see anything in the presentation about any community outreach efforts as far as connecting with our youth. And when I had a conversation with you the other day privately, you said that you didn't have the resources to, I might be misquoting you, so correct me if I'm wrong. You said you needed resources and you needed better working conditions for your officers so that you can get people to focus on that. So you said it was two things that was enabling you to do that. It was the working conditions, and then you said it was the resources, the lack of resources. And so can you, I'm asking you, what you shared with me on the phone, and I've already communicated with the city manager, I need you to share with this entire council.
Okay. No, you quoted me accurately, Councilwoman. One of the things that we looked at over the course of the year, and see, I'm one of those people, I manage by walking, right? And so when I'm going around to these different work sites, I do see the conditions that many of our people are in. And what I've told my people is that we're going to slow the growth of the police department. And let me tell you why. Right now, and I could use Lieutenant Nick Williams as an example, and I hope he doesn't mind me using him as an example, but he has people, staff and units working out of 3 different locations. And if with the PAL coordinator position and with the implementation of PAL, that would be a 4th, which means he'll have people scattered through 3 or 4 different workspaces. And it's really difficult for him, especially being a young commander, managing under those circumstances. And so as you begin to spread out even further, you spread your resources, because what we want to do is make sure that even as we begin to grow, that we're putting the right processes in place as the police department grows. And so the working conditions are not ideal for our people. We've talked about a police headquarters, and we've talked about the need to expedite that because right now we have people working out of a lot of different circumstances. And so it's one thing to say we have a PAL program. It's another thing to say that we have the outreach in place, but it's also something that's extremely important to give our police officers the resources around the capacity to make that happen. I've worked with I've spoken with Chris Pike, who's the Economic Development Director. We've talked about developing a police headquarters that's embedded in our community. And let me tell you why that's so important. Because it's one thing for us to say we're a community-minded police department, but we have to be accessible and interactive with our community. Every police facility that we develop, I want to make sure that it's developed with the idea in mind that that police department doesn't belong to the police department, that it belongs to the community. Chris Pike and I have talked about a combination of putting together a police facility along with a community center. And in that community center, we talked about putting an urban garden in place. Now, urban garden does a lot of things for our outreach. Let me tell you what happens. Right now, we're looking at the biggest gap in our society, or the biggest gap in our city. And I said this on Miss Penny Rogers' radio show just the other day. The biggest gap in our community is between our elderly people and our young people. The language doesn't exist that allows our elderly people to communicate with our young people. And what I mean by that is that as the last generation of a baby boomer, I'm used to telling people, y'all young folks need to get it together. Well, that puts them defensive. And what happens is that our young people are shutting down. In order for us to be able to communicate with our young people effectively, we have to have something in common that we're willing to come to, and nothing's more in common than the earth, and being able to talk over an urban garden, or maybe creating walking trails around the police department, where when our youth come in, that we have that environment that's conducive to those sort of conversations. And so I understand the need for outreach. I'm all about outreach. But at the end of the day, what we have to make sure is that because we have minimal resources, that we're using those resources effectively, and that we're not stretched out in 8 and 9 different facilities to try to make that happen. It works better when we're able to attack it as a team, and we're able to do it at a central base of operation. And so I really appreciated the conversation that you and I had the other day, Councilwoman, but maybe I haven't done a good enough job of conveying what my vision is to the body, so that we could try to help facilitate those sort of facilities within this police department.
So, and for full transparency, that community center / resource center is, we're looking to do that at the District 3 Red Oak
Absolutely.
Police precinct.
Right.
And that is a vision of the mayor and mine for that Red Oak Historic District. So I'm looking forward to working with you and Mr. Pike to bringing that to fruition. Currently, where is the Community Outreach Division housed? I thought it was housed in the precinct on Butler Road.
We have some parts of it on Butler Road. We have some parts of it over on Old National. And then I believe the park rangers are operating out of Stonewall Tail right now.
Okay, so just to be transparent, you also mentioned that right now you all don't have any place to do proper, if you have to bring someone in to do interviews, or if you have to detain youth, or if you have to do, you mentioned that you don't have any place right now that is secure and proper to do integration interviews, to detain youth, and a lot of our officers are working out of their cars, because with the pandemic right now, you all have to limit the precinct, the back and forth. So it's the working conditions for our officers. You explained to me, I'm putting all of this out, because we were paying a monthly fee, and I need to know the cost. How much have we put out for that building on Old National that we paid to, and we also paid for that building to be white box, and now we're no longer getting that location. So I need that number, Ms. Bembry. How much money have we wasted of our taxpayers' dollars for a building that we are no longer getting now? And so did I quote you correct? You're saying our officers at this time are in deplorable working conditions?
Yes, and And I'll be perfectly, excuse me, I'll be perfectly honest with you. Doing everything we can to try to get our officers in better, I have some, thank you, in better conditions, but certainly we need the assistance of the council and the administration to make that happen.
So, Ms. Sally Jones, Mr. Toms, and our mayor and council, I hope that we're doing everything in our power in fiscal year 2022 to get our officers who are doing their best to keep us safe in better working conditions, and stop dragging our feet and getting them in a precinct. I never wavered on that precinct on Old National, but some of us did, and we gambled and we lost out, and we wasted taxpayers' money because we were paying a monthly fee, and we paid for that building to be white box, and for nothing, because now we lost out. We're not getting the building again. Now, my second question is, we have an increase in population, according to our census, of 107,000. Now, our last, the DCA average was based on a population of 88,000 residents. And the DCA average said that we were supposed to have about 250 officers.
Right.
And so my question to you is, do we need to go back to Georgia Tech and get that study updated based on the last census numbers that came in?
Well, believe it or not, when we did that study, I asked them to factor in for growth over the next 10 years.
Oh, great.
Right. And so one of the things, and the reason I said 10 years is because 10 years from now, I went through a beat realignment with previous departments every 5 years. I think that this beat realignment will serve us well for at least a 10-year period. And the reason that I say that is because what we're looking at doing right now, because we have the most undeveloped land in the region, as that land becomes developed over the next 10 years, that we'll then have to sit down and take a look at our beat alignment after we start to realize the types of development that we're anticipating over the next 10 to 15 years. And so, and that's also, we had them to look at Fulton Industrial, which they're saying should be divided up into 6 different beats. And so that's why we're looking at a 24 beat design right now, with a cap right now anywhere between 295 to 300 police officers.
Well, let me.
I'm not finished, Mayor. Hold 1 second. I got 2 more questions.
Time is up, Ms. Lewis.
Okay, well, I'm going back in the queue because I got 2 more questions.
Go back in the queue.
Okay, thank you.
Let me caution, before we go any further, let me caution. You have to be mindful of your questions that you're asking Meadows in public. There's some things that need to be handled in executive session. So I just want, as you come up, as others you come up, please keep that in mind. Mr. Khalid, go right ahead.
Hey, thank you so much, Chief Meadows, for your presentation. My first question is about something I didn't hear, and that was around the park rangers.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 17 parks and 5 park rangers.
Right.
Are we adding more park rangers? And I understand that even that sometimes they are even pulled from the parks that they're in to respond to calls. What is our plan for expanding our park rangers program?
Well, ultimately, after we start looking at the beat alignment, we certainly want to try to make sure that we get somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, at least 10 park rangers. I do know that we have 17 parks, but some of them are relatively close geographically. And so it's not inconceivable that you can have maybe 1 patrolling 2, maybe 3 parks, given the size. I do know that some of the parks, particularly the one in District 4, can be extremely problematic, given yes, it's the lack of use. I've gone through that park on several different occasions, and so we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence around some of our parks, particularly the ones that are most vulnerable. And so I'm relying on Lieutenant Nick Williams here when I believe that 10, and as we move forward and start to ramp up more programming in a lot of the parks, that number certainly will increase. But over the course of the pandemic, we were utilizing them in various capacities because the programming simply wasn't there. But we'll get a better sense of what that looks like as the parks begin to open back up and they start to ramp back up for the various services that they offer.
Awesome. And my last question is, you mentioned in your presentation that police are allowed to ride ATVs on city streets. Where, to your knowledge, can City of South Fulton citizens legally ride ATVs in this city?
It's only on private property where that happens, where it takes place. And I know that I've had this conversation with Councilwoman Gumbs. I know we have a number of horse farms and things of that nature, and it's not inconceivable that they could ride them legally there. I did have a group of individuals that were trying to teach children how to ride them safely. And I explained to him that it wasn't proper for them to be on the city street, that they may want to look to some of the individuals that own land that's quite frankly undeveloped. And so I think that would be a better use of some of the land rather than trying to just limit them from being in the city altogether. Obviously, it's a recreational activity. It can be done, but as long as it's done safely, that's the only thing we're advocating for. The police department is not against ATVs. I just want to be clear. But what we are advocating for is safe use of those recreational vehicles.
No, I agree 100%. And I do want to make sure as long as we're selling them and that people are buying them, we have to find some place that people can ride them. So for Mr. Landrum, I'll be asking you about that in your upcoming presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. Now we're Ms. Gumbs, followed by Ms. Gilliard, then Ms. Willis.
Chief Meadows, thank you for your presentation. I got quite a few questions, so just bear with me. My first question is in regards to the Butner Road precinct. There has been talks about it opening up for 24 hours. Have we budgeted for that activity to occur in this next fiscal year?
Well, most of the satellite precincts, and I'll say this in full transparency, we've moved administrative offices in those locations, and it's mainly because of the lack of space that we have that we've done that. And so, as you well know, administrative offices close at some point. And so my goal is to, as we get that central base of operations and we have personnel working out of a police headquarters, that will deploy police personnel that will be dispatched from those different precincts, such as Cedar Grove, such as Butner Road, and eventually, the Campbell Road facility. And so it will be ultimately a 24-hour operation, but we're looking at doing that after we have created sort of a central base of operations, so that those patrol units will have the space so that when they come in, that they'll be able to operate in those facilities effectively. Okay,
understood. Also too, in the evenings or after these precincts have been closed, and the city closes, of course, we have the party houses and the short-term rentals. I know we talked about code enforcement, actually, I guess, being one officer or someone being on your team. Are we still moving in that direction to manage those type of activities that are after city hours?
So we have Officer Gibbons, or Corporal Gibbons, who that's what his primary function is. And so it's going to be up to code enforcement to actually communicate with Corporal Gibbons when they're seeing those sort of challenges, so that we can make sure that that two-way communication is happening within the police department and with code enforcement. We want to make sure that that we're having the appropriate response under those circumstances. And so that's going to be extremely important. I haven't gotten nearly as many complaints about the party houses recently. That's not to say that they don't exist. The complaints may be going directly to code enforcement. But I haven't been hearing that as big of a problem as it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also too, you had mentioned that you all have purchased 9 tag readers, license plate tag readers for the Old National. Are there any, is there any purchases that are budgeted for license plate readers for other areas of the city, for those major corridors, like maybe,
Absolutely.
Cascade, Campbellton?
So we have the CID that's committed to putting tag readers along the Fulton Industrial Corridor. I'm looking at ramping up our tag readers along the Camp Creek corridor. I know that recently when we had the situation involving your incident, that we went back to the tag readers, and sometimes you don't really know where your holes are until you know. And so what we're doing right now is an assessment of the tag readers along Camp Creek. And we certainly want to look at some along the South Fulton Parkway corridor as well. And so it's never a good idea to add a bunch of assets out in the field at one time. We try to ramp those up over time, because as some of those assets go down, you want to make sure that you have the right mechanism in place to monitor all of your technology assets out in the field. And so we don't want to shock the system all at once and buy 50 tag readers and deploy them all at one time. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the health of those assets as they go out into the field, and we want to ramp them up over the course of time. But we did recognize some holes along that Camp Creek corridor that we're now looking at. Yes.
Okay. And lastly, as far as the gunfire, I know I had mentioned gunfire location, and I know that there's some software to kind of help us kind of nail and narrow it down as far as where the gunfire is coming from. Are you considering anything of that nature, that type of software? Because I've seen it successful in other cities.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is something that's on your radar.
We've looked at it. It's just the technology is extremely expensive. I believe it's $100,000 for one sensor, and so that sensor covers one radius of a mile. And so we have to be mindful of where we're putting that sort of technology. I do know that there are some companies that are in the process of developing inexpensive technology that I believe would be more conducive to a city like South Fulton. When you talk about a $100,000 sensor to cover one radius square mile, you're talking about cities the size of Atlanta. In fact, when I met with the ShotSpotter CEO a few years ago, I asked him if he had the thought of creating some products for smaller cities. And not necessarily your Chicago's, New York's, Atlanta, and things of that nature. And so there are companies that are starting to ramp up the technology, and we're in the middle of trying to test some of that technology. I heard someone mention an innovation center earlier. I believe it was Tuesday. We were thinking about starting one in the police department and getting students from Georgia Tech to sit in and try technology and try to break it if they could. I'm just using that as an analogy, but if they could find the holes in it for us, we certainly want to try to have young people coming in and testing that technology for us.
I definitely think that would be a great addition if you all could start an innovation department. And the last thing that I have, I know that we were talking about, well, this has been brought up a couple of times from some of the officers as far as promotions. I know we do a lot of promotions within the police department. And that could be relative to, pay raises or trying to get people to where they need to have a decent salary. Have we looked at or worked with HR or budgeted anything to kind of help, help with the officers growing in their roles or being able to be promoted to other areas? Because I think it's kind of like stagnant in certain areas from my understanding.
Yeah, what we've done is created kind of a leadership track, not just for command staff, but for our police officers also. We've partnered with Atlanta Metropolitan State. What they have right now is 7 classes of leadership And we're encouraging our police officers to sign up for those, because what we're finding out more often than not, they're able to get college credit towards their bachelor's degree when they take those classes. Now, I'm able to pay for those 7 classes through the drug fund account. And so we've been encouraging our police officers to take those. And so as police officers are able to make it through that, we're encouraging them to stay in school and try to finish their degree if they don't already have one. And then we're also looking at when we sit down and start selecting and going through the promotional process, those individuals that have actually completed that leadership track and that have put themselves in that position. And so the infrastructure is there for it. And at the command level, we have 2 individuals that's going to Columbus State University, finishing up their master's degree right now. And we're actually able to pay for that through drug funds as well. And so on both levels, at the very basic levels of the police department, we have those leadership tracks in place. We've been getting that out to our police officers and encouraging them to take advantage of it. And so we're going to continue to work with that. Now, as far as HR, we had the HR director. She came in and sat in on a couple of our promotional interviews. And so we do those at least once a year, where officers that are eligible are able to come in. Now, you have to have at least 3 years of experience in law enforcement before you're eligible to take that particular test. And many of our police officers, well, I'd wager to say almost 66 to 70% of our police officers have anywhere from 1 to just shy of 3 years. So we should be coming up on the bulk of the police department within the next year, promotional cycles that will be eligible for that. And so we would certainly encourage all of our people to take advantage of those promotional opportunities.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Those were my questions, and looking forward to a great 2022.
And before we go further, let me readjust my speaker's alignment. That's Gilliard, Reeves, Baker, Willis, and I will end after Willis. Myself will close out. So right now, Ms. Gilliard.
Thank you, Chief. I want to give you a lot of kudos. I'm sitting here thinking about when you first came on board and how far we've progressed every year. Every year, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of innovation, and I just want to give you those kudos. I have 2 things I'd like to talk about, and I'm really glad that you mentioned Cedar Grove Park. And when you did, that's what made me think about when you first came on board and we looked at Cedar Grove Park. And I remember there were 2 young men there and we didn't know what they were doing. And you said, stop the car, and you got out and you went over and talked to them. And I just thought that was just excellent. And they left. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the park doesn't have anything. And I know I talk about this a lot. And there are 5 subdivisions with children that are very close by. And so a tot lot, even a restroom, because there's no restroom there anymore, that was torn down. And there was a lot of conversation with the former parks director, and we had talked about a garden there and a walking trail. And even the mayor had talked about art features at that park. So I'm just hoping that eventually something will be there. That's number 1. Number 2, the citizens might not know this, and I was just really shocked that people when you think people are having parties and you don't know what's going on, some of the parties are sex parties and they are advertised that way. And the chief knows that he's had to deal with that. And I just want to know whether or not that's growing. Is it contained? What is the status of that?
So we have one person that his primary job is scouring social media all day. And when we see those sex parties advertised, we do everything in our power to knock them down before they get started. You'd be amazed at how many different things you see advertised on social media and what people are advertising. We've been able to give heads up to Chattahoochee Hills for some sex parties because of the intelligence.
Is it square miles?
Yeah, the
Linear
intelligence.
miles.
Excuse me, Mr. Neymar. Yeah, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Chief.
The intelligence that's coming through the police department. And so having that intelligence, they are still being advertised, Councilwoman. But when we see them, we make it a concerted effort to try to do what we can to knock them down before they even get started. And so, it does become a problem from time to time, but we monitor those sort of things on social media regularly.
Thank you. And then my last question is about police living in the community. What's the status? What does that look like? What's the status of that?
Well, the city manager has an initiative, and she's trying to right now give, and I don't want to step on your toes, Ms. Sadler Jones. Did you want to comment on it? Okay.
Yes, I was going to present it during my presentation, but
Okay.
yes, we are a part of the budget is a housing allowance for public safety personnel who desire to live within our city limits. So we have budgeted enough to do a pilot program. And then, of course, we will look at and see, what the participation rate is. And then, of course, if it expands and it's something that's successful, maybe we can not only do the housing allowance, but maybe in the future look at doing a down payment assistance program. But we felt like it was in the best interest of the city that we at least start with the housing allowance this year and see how that goes. So we are definitely asking for council support in that initiative.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Gilliard. Next, we'll have Councilman Reeves.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Chief. Just to piggyback on that, is this what we were just talking about, Madam Jones? Is this for our first responders?
Yes, sir. It would be for first responders. It would be either rental or mortgage assistance, and we would cap it at a monthly amount. Of course, we will have to provide, they will have to provide documentation of where they live within the city limits. But yes, the plan is a pilot program for public safety.
Awesome. When that plan grows, can we see about expanding that to teachers as well? If that's
Well, I think with our city funds, I'm not sure if we would be able to do it for any.
Right. I'm just saying if they live here in the city and teach here at a school within the city, that's stipulation. This is a suggestion. I just think,
Okay.
That program. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Chief, yes, thank you for all that y'all doing. Plus, we talk about the facilities. Thank you for the sign at Jerome Road and National, even though we do want to work on upgrading the facilities all over. And just again, thanks for the presentation and support you guys 100%.
Thank you so much, Councilman. I appreciate that.
All right, Councilwoman Reeves, thank you very much. Now we have Councilman Baker.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging me. And Chief, thank you for your presentation. You're well deserving of all of the kudos that you've received thus far for the things that you're doing. I actually have a whole lot.
Can't hear you, Mr. Baker.
Yes. Is this better?
It's better.
Okay, I actually have a whole lot, and I know that we're scheduled to actually break right now.
Yes.
But I would like to just ask the assistant city manager, Don Times, if he has met with the chief regarding the 4 initiatives that we spoke about regarding modifying and modernizing some of the aspects of the way we move in law enforcement, the possibility of hiring.
Mr. Baker, you're breaking up.
I apologize for this. Fisher Price, my first Wi-Fi. What I was asking is if Mr. Toms had any conversation with Chief Meadows regarding the initiatives in hiring a full-time post-certified mental health expert or someone to work.
Yes, sir. We discussed several of those options with the social aspects of adding additional training to the entire police department to be able to cover a lot of your initiatives. So, yes, sir. I'll set up a meeting between us and invite any other city council that would like to attend that. That way, you guys could all, kind of participate in how we move these type of programs forward throughout the police department.
Yes, and to add just briefly to what my colleague, District 5, Corey Reeves, just stated, while I understand why the city manager advised we can't do what he contended regarding the teachers, but there are concessions that can be made in working as a municipality in concert with the school. And I think as a part of modernizing or even as modifying, if you will, the way that Councilwoman Willis even stated with the outreach can be one of the concessions that I had as my second initiative. But I look forward to you setting up that meeting and everyone being a part of it. And I guess we can go into detail there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker. Good effort in the mental health thing. Thanks for bringing that up. Now we'll have Ms. Willis, then myself. I'll close it out, and then we'll have lunch. Councilwoman Willis. Councilwoman Willis.
I was trying to unmute. I'm sorry. So as far as us using our municipal tax dollars to provide any type of rental assistance to to teachers, teachers, educators have a special place in my heart because, my mother is a retired educator, but I do not agree with that at all. For every dollar that we spend, they get 50%, they get 50 cents of a dollar. And they got their own American Rescue funds. So it would be more prudent for the school board to come up with some type of rental assistance for their teachers. I mean, our municipal tax dollars, American Rescue funds, should be used for our staff. And that's just where I am with that. Let me finish my last two questions.
Go right ahead.
Update. Do you have an update on the video legislation for commercial truck and municipal roads? Commercial trucks on municipal roads. I know you asked the General Assembly to work on that legislation for you, Chief.
I do not, but I do know that our lobbyist is planning a meeting with some of the department heads coming up, and I think they have a special session coming up soon, and it's my intention to broach that subject with them there. I've gotten quite a few complaints about it. I think that technology would help to serve as a force multiplier for the police department. And I've also had discussions about potentially raising or looking at the fines, if the fines are stiff enough for people that are violating the truck route ordinance. We've had that conversation with Ms. Jones in certain parts of the administration. We certainly want to push that conversation forward as well.
Okay, and I would ask that you please work with Senator Halpern on the Senate side. I know you are working with Bazemore in the House, but sometimes you can approach it from both sides. So I'm suggesting that you reach out to Sonia Halpern on the Senate side.
Will do.
And last question for me is, how many officers are you requesting for fiscal year 2022?
We're requesting 50 plus police officers coming up for the upcoming budget cycle. We do have some vacancies, and so what we've done in an effort to try to help, I guess, manage the finances a little bit more. We've pushed those hires out to the mid-year budget adjustment so that we can fill the current vacancies that we have. And so that's one of the things we're looking at doing, is filling our vacancies by the end of this calendar year, and then moving into FY 2022 start with the new positions that the body grants the police department.
Okay, and of the 50 officers that you're requesting, how many of them are going on the street?
Well, a bulk of them will.
Okay.
We've asked for I think 5 new detective positions with the influx of crime that should be coming in off of Fulton Industrial Corridor. And then there are some other positions, but a bulk, I believe 30 of that 50 will be going to patrol.
Okay, and do you have any going to community outreach? Because I understand you're saying that they're all over the place, but we really need to beef up our efforts. I mean, I know you do a great job. Y'all do a great job with Coffee with the Cops, but unfortunately, our youth don't drink coffee. So I would like to see, maybe ice cream with a cop, more events that will engage our youth, because with the unrest issues that went on in 2020 and 2021, we really do need our youth to understand that officers are not their enemies. And I would even like to see a youth conference in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies, and maybe some of the council members, Councilmember Reeves and I, can work with you and get one plan once this pandemic dies down. But I really would like to see something like that happen in our city.
And you know what, I completely, I love the idea. I've had the conversation with some of the chiefs so that we're not just running a City of South Fulton PAL unit, that we're running more of a regional PAL program, so that we can have kids from all of the South Fulton communities. To be perfectly honest with you, we have College Park addresses here, we have Fairburn addresses here, and I think it would be important for each one of the police departments to dedicate resources to a regional PAL program. I know that I've had this conversation with Sheriff Labatt, and he's all about the outreach. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, and when we started seeing an uptick in E911 calls, we started taking a hit in our community policing section. And so as the pandemic subsides, we do expect to ramp those numbers back up, of the number of police officers assigned over there, because during the pandemic, I think we lost at some point about 15% of our workforce. And as you can imagine, that could be particularly problematic. And so we're looking at right now, of getting those community policing numbers back to where they were prior to that.
Okay, thank you. I yield, Mayor. And again, thank you for doing a good job. You all have done a yeoman's job with attacking the crime, and I hope you're not taking the community outreach push back as being critical. But I just really everybody has room for improvement, and that's just an area that I would like to see us improve in. Thank you for all that you do to keep us safe. And again, I am horning in on this. I hope Mayor, City Manager, and Council, we do our darnest to make sure that we get our officers in better working conditions, because they're doing a yeoman's job keeping us safe, keeping our residents safe. Our crime is decreased, and nobody wants to live where they're not safe. So the least we can do is make sure our officers have good working conditions. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Meadows, how you doing?
Just fine, Mayor. How about with you?
Doing good. I don't need to tell you what a great job you have. You make me feel good as mayor when I go around and I cite the people what my crime statistics are. So very good job. One thing I would like to ask is, you know as well as I do what it costs to bring a police officer in, to maintain him, get him suited up and all this stuff.
Right.
As you talk about incentives in the future, are you requiring in a contract for the new hires that they stay with us for a period of time?
Yes, when we bring in a new hire, they have to stay for a period of 2 years. Now, for somebody that we put through mandate, which is the police academy, that's dictated by state law. They have to stay with us for a 2-year period. Now, if we bring someone in and give them a hiring bonus, then the same expectation applies there as well. And so we want to make sure that when we're bringing in people, we're giving them that incentive, but we're also creating the appropriate environment for them to stay, and it will be able to retain them long term as well.
Okay. My second issue, well, not issue, my second conversation, Councilwoman Willis touched on it a little bit. I think it was her. I want us to do an extraordinary job in policing these tractor trailers.
Right.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to see, something. I have myself moved at least 10 by calling the police over in our area, Miss Gilliard in my area. And it's ridiculous. So what am I saying? And I know that you have some challenges through this state, and I will be helping on that. But when we see one, and he's not on our streets, I don't care about this hand slapping or park somewhere. He needs to be told or he needs to be cited. And that's the way we're going to get some respect with these truckers and things of that nature, because understand this, the warehouses that being built in Union City are spec warehouses, which means that they don't have a tenant. So once they start renting out that space, you're going to see more and more trucks. And I want you to be able to do that. The second thing is, I appreciate having you because you and I talk, and I get feed from other mayors, and we just talked the other night about College Park is taking the liquor license for 90 days on 2 clubs on their end. And I wanted you to know that if they're doing that, you knew that we probably come back on our end. All right. They're going to shoot them down there. So I want to continue to have that relationship with you so that if I hear things from neighboring cities, that you could do it and react. I think it was Councilwoman Khalid that talked about park rangers. I mean, we had 5. I think we got a lot of parks. And I think Councilwoman Gilliard mentioned it too. We need to probably look at that and see how we can, and the parks are far away. That's a lot for 5 people to do. But I know that Nick and those are doing their darndest to make sure that everything is right. So I just wanted to make that those comments to you. You're doing a great job. And one last thing, Chief, when it comes to those people who work for us in the police department, your vision is our vision.
Thank you, man.
We ain't working against each other on nothing when it comes to the police department. Now, I know we've had some things where we could have done better had we not procrastinated, but that's water over the bridge. We got to move forward and do something about what you're saying. But I would caution you to, whatever you're doing, make sure you're in concert with, or you're in communication rather, with the city manager, all right, and us, so that we can kind of dialogue through these things together, all right, and as and pick up something we can live with and then go forward with. So I just want to let you know that you know how I am.
Right.
I tried to get every precinct I could for $1. And we were good. We got that. But I know we got to go forward, and we're working right now. I just got a call from the I gotta wait to get off this call from the housing authority to see how long we can close that out. And so Chief, thank you for all you do. Your vision is our vision, and we appreciate every officer that wears this uniform that says South Fulton, Georgia.
I would like to say this, Mayor, before I get off. The parks have come up several times, and I know historically, when we've deployed cameras in the park, they've come out of the parks budget. I'm sending some police officers to get trained in set tech principles. They're going out to become actually experts in it. And one of the things I'm looking at, and we've talked about the use of the camera money, but we want to be able to expand our technology to include our parks. And so even when we talk about creating those force multipliers. I want cameras throughout our parks and along our walking trails. And so my expectation is that those revenues are generated as a result of technology, and that we use those revenues also to expand our technological capabilities to include our parks and walking trails. And so when they come back from this training, my expectation is that they'll go into our parks and make assessments of those vulnerable areas where cameras need to be. And we certainly will do that with our new Director of Parks and Recreations. I mean, we don't make those sort of decisions in a vacuum. I want you to understand that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're getting the appropriate digital footprint in our parks as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, I had my hand raised for
No. Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
That I would be the last because we have to go into lunch.
Oh man, God, this is important.
That's all right. We can catch you. I mean, we'll get your stuff in. All right. Mr. Thank you for being reasonable, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna break for lunch. We need a motion for that.
Mayor, can we have 30 minutes versus 15 minutes? I don't know what we're gonna eat in 15 minutes.
The tuna sandwich?
If it's the consensus of the body, that's not a problem.
When I started lying, I started.
What? Who's that?
I move that we recess for 30 minutes.
There's a second?
So move.
Okay, been properly moved to second. Any question about that? Hearing none, what time will we be back? I mean, wait a minute, let me vote. Hearing none, vote please, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call vote to recess for 30 minutes. Councilmember Rao. Councilmember Rao. Councilmember Gums.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willis.
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliard.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Khalid. Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
That motion is approved.
That brings us back at what time, Mr. Clerk?
We say 12:40, so that'd be 1:10.
Okay, we'll see you back at 1:10. Thank you all so much.
Recording